Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Experience Creators and another episode. My name is Carolene and I am your host. Today it is an absolute pleasure to introduce you to Brian Fanzo. Brian is a digital futurist keynote speaker who teaches companies how to leverage current and up-and-coming technologies to better connect with their audiences and their customers. He has been recognized as a top 25 social business leader of the future by The Economist and is the founder of iSocialFans, which has helped create digital and influencer strategies for some of the world's most iconic brands, such as Adobe, Dell, and UFC. Today, we are going to talk about how you can bring what you offer to life through virtual experiences. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the interview. Brian, thank you so much for being on the Experience Creators. I am so excited to speak with you. So welcome. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on today.
I think the pleasure is all mine. I'm excited to be here and excited to be part of the launch and everything you got going on. And we might be on different sides of the world, but it's kind of fun to connect here. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, you are part of the Premiere Month. So, you were one of the first people that I thought of is I need this guy on my Premiere Month. So honestly, it's an honor to have you. I want to dive in and, this series is all about experiences and how we can bring experiences to life, whether it's a tiny experience of maybe going to the supermarket or a full-blown event. So for you, how as a digital future keynote speaker, what for you is the elements that make up an incredible experience?
Oh man, you're starting off with a good question. This is good to go. We're got the bar set high. For me, I think that even like understanding what an experience is today, we have to kind of look at it from like a lens of, I think oftentimes, and probably your audience, when we hear the word experience, we all have like something, right? There's something we probably picture or visualize. And it for me, like, sometimes when I think of it as the little moments with my daughters when I have like that, like, we were, setting up the Christmas tree the other day, and like, just like that, like experience of like, you feel you're a part of something, you feel like a connection, but you also feel something that's, special and unique. And then when we think about that, in business and, our current life, especially with COVID, I think experiences can be something, small as well as something large, right? Something from an event that you go to and it's, an epic experience, to even maybe just a phone call that you had that really connected. So I think for me, when I think about experiences, I think about that connection is probably the thing that probably stands out the most to me. It's like our connection to the moment, our connection to the person, our connection to the people around us. Maybe it's even just our connection, to, and this will kind of be a little bit off base, but I'm a Taylor Swift fan, a big Taylor Swift fan, and her new album came out last night at midnight. And so when I woke up this morning, I put it on, and it's funny because her album came out earlier this year, and it was just like, I thought like the perfect, I remembered the experience I had. Like it hit the third song of her album back in March, and I was like, wow, like it was an amazing experience. And so like that to me, it's kind of neat that we can, encompass experiences, in many different ways.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, especially when you're looking at how can we create impact for somebody, whether it's one person, whether it's, you speak in front of crazy large audiences. So can we impact one person in a positive way? I worked for Cirque du Soleil for a very long time, and they are experts at creating impactful moments and magical moments. And a lot of the work that I'm doing right now, it's like, how can we bring that magic and that meaningfulness back into experiences? So I love that. And especially even you saying like with your daughters, that you have so many moments that just connect immediately to an emotion, right? And then
Right.
that elicits kind of imagination of before, maybe probably when they were younger, when they were born, even before they were born. So I love that. What do you do? Like as I said at the beginning, you are one of the people that I wanted to have on in my Premiere Month, because this is all about creating incredible experiences. And I believe that you are very good at that. I first got connected to you through your podcast, FOMO Fans. And then after that, just continue to be inspired by all the work that you're doing. So share with us, what do you do? And also kind of what you're focusing on right now.
Sure. So yeah, so I think we all have like unique paths to where we're at. I love the Circus Olay, transition, and that's such an experience, right? And
Yeah.
for me, like I graduated. I played hockey in college, graduated college, couldn't really get a job in my profession, and then I finally got one, but it was in cybersecurity, which is not what I went to. I went to school for computer science, but it was in cybersecurity for the U.S. government. And I remember, I was actually getting milk in a grocery store line when someone offered me the job just based on the fraternity letters that I was wearing.
Wow.
And I had to take a pay cut at the time to get it. And I ended up working there for almost 10 years, a little over 9 years. And I grew a large team. We were in charge of training and development at all of the U.S. military bases around the world. So at the time, I had been to 54 countries. I've now been to 77 countries total. And so there was a lot of travel, a lot of, I would go to these different countries, work with military, work with local to deploy these different software. But for me, like so much of what I loved was helping people change and embrace new technology, whatever it might be. After I left that, I took on what I considered my dream job, which was a technology evangelist, which is just really a fancy way of saying someone that loves helping a brand talk about what they do without selling or marketing. Really, that's what my job was. It was modeled after Guy Kawasaki and what he did at Apple and his being Steve Jobs' right hand. And funny enough, after 2 years of that job, a lot of people would come to me and say, Brian, your title is a technology evangelist, but you help us remove more technology than we deploy. You help us kind of reassess the technology. And so I left that a little over 6 years ago, and I've been on my own now for 6 years. And really, that's what I do now. I try to help people, audiences, events, businesses, leaders, find the synergy between technology and humanity. And that might sound a little fluffy, but where that comes into place is, right now has been an interesting one, right? My whole business, or not my whole business, majority of my business was keynote speaking. And March, all of that came to a complete halt. I lost 18 speaking gigs and 6 clients in 1 week. Definitely not something I planned on. I think we all had our own journey through that COVID. And for me, I had a couple down weeks of what do I do? How am I going to make this work? And then I really focused on virtual and said, what are the experiences I can create? I already, create a lot of video. I host 2 podcasts, and I've kind of gone all in on virtual. And really, it's not, creating a webinar or a Zoom. It's more about, okay, how can we change? How can we find the synergy between all of this virtual technology and the humanity, the experiences that we're now missing out on when we don't have events? I've traveled since 2004. I've traveled 40 plus weeks every year. This year, I will have traveled maybe 10 weeks total. So it's been a culture shock for me. And although I because my life has always been travel, I've always loved that. But so for now, right now, some brands bring me in to help them cope with the pivoting and the change. Some want me to better understand this younger generation because they've been putting off wanting to understand them, and now they're stuck in this virtual Zoom world. And then I think the other piece of what I'm doing right now, a lot of what I'm doing is, helping us reassess what this hybrid future looks like. Because I think for many people, we try to take an offline experience and we put it online. And when we do, it fails. It fails miserably because nothing we do online will ever replace what we do offline. I think that's something really important to remember. And I'm someone that loves social media, loves video, all in on virtual. But I never have the inclination that, okay, what I'm doing here will replace the idea of us meeting in person, right? I love that we're on Zoom and you're across a world, but our ability to sit down in a coffee shop and have that connection can't be replaced virtually. But we can do things to what I like to say is remove the mechanics of what we do offline and reposition it online. And so some of the idea of okay, if you have a great experience at a coffee shop, it's not the fact that you're outside, you have a beautiful place around you, and it's great coffee. It's, okay, we're relaxed, it's comfortable, we have a conversation, we're not marketing each other, right? We're looking at each other's eyes, we're committing to the conversation, right? A lot of virtual, the reason I believe a lot of virtual is rough and disconnected is because we don't commit to it. Like when we go to a physical event, we don't book phone calls. We don't go, we don't double book ourselves. We're all in. And yet when we go to virtual, we're like, oh, I'll attend the webinar, I'll do my email, I'll, look at my phone, I'll, change over the laundry, and we have all of those things. And so I think what I'm really focused on right now is helping us, assess how we can take those offline experiences, remove the mechanics, and create hopefully something unique online that will kind of grow into this hybrid future.
When you were talking about the coffee shop example, the first thing I thought of was the smell, that amazing smell of coffee. It's almost like if you could create an experience where you sent everyone a little pack, some kind of little pack before the event, and then they just put it on their desk and they just had whiffs of, coffee coming every 5 minutes or so. I mean,
it's so funny you say that. So Adobe, I'm an Adobe brand ambassador, and they did a brand ambassador retreat virtual. And they actually sent us an entire box, a giant box. Adobe does everything like very design focused because it's Adobe. And you open the box and it had numbers on it. And we opened the numbers together, everyone on the call. And each one was coffee, and we all started the coffee at the same time. So we all had that feel. The next one was like this light. We all turned the light. It was like a light to put above your web camera. We all put the light on at the same time, and we all kind of like it. And it was as close to that. Like, wait, we're kind of experiencing it together, because I love that you brought it there, because I think that's the number one thing missing right now. I call it co-consumption or co-experience. Like, when we, even going to the movies, we don't go to the movies now, like just being able to sit around people that laugh when you laugh, right? Like I joke, I have my daughters, 50-50 with their mom. And when I don't have my kids, I watch a lot of TV. I love TV, but I would kill just for someone to watch TV with me, right? Like just sit on the couch with me, right? It's that co-consumption. And so doing things like sending coffee and having that like same aroma, and that's where I think we can think outside the box and really, create something special in these times.
I love that term co-consumption. When I worked at Cirque du Soleil, I watched the shows all the time, maybe not the entire show, but I would always jump in and watch little bits and pieces. And I found every time that I would get complacent, or I'd get a bit like, oh, I'm super over this, I would go in and stand in the big top, and I wouldn't watch the show necessarily because of the amount of times that I've seen it, but I would watch the audience and I would watch the reaction, and I would, even hearing, especially kids laughing at certain moments, and it actually brought an entire new wave of energy to me. And it's something that I then consciously would do time and time again for that exact reason. You are watching these people that are sharing an experience together, and you're in that same environment. It's very different if I was just to sit there and watch it by myself. It just wouldn't be the same, So yeah, I love that idea about co-consumption.
That's so, I tell you what, I think if everyone could do that right now, right? Just think about that. Like if you're feeling mundane or run down, or like, oh my goodness, I'm doing the same thing over and over again, like just experience it from the eyes of someone that you're changing their life. Or maybe even like a small business owner, right? Like rather than looking at it from behind the counter, look at it, the next person comes in the front door, walk with them as they go to the different things and see the things that you have set up. Like I love that you did that. Like that to me is the epitome of how we have to continue to stay motivated and inspired. It's not often by us doing the same thing over and over again. It's remembering that like first time. And like, I remember my very first Cirque du Soleil show. Like I remember being so, and funny enough, like I wasn't dragged to it, but I was kind of like, oh, I guess I'll go.
Right.
And I remember like within minutes, the two people that I was with, they looked over and like, Brian, you're captivated. And I was like, I completely underestimated what this was, right? And I now been to 3 total. And to me, that was such a perfect example of like, I remember being like, oh, of course I'll go, sure. And we were pre-drinking, and I kind of was just like passing by. And when I left, I talked about it for months, right? And like that is that magic of an experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever I would watch a show, I always knew who were the first timers, because their eyes were just like the minute it actually. The magic happens before the show even starts for the most part, because there's a lot of animation in the crowd, but I could always pick out the people who had never seen it before, and I would love having conversations with them to kind of get their reaction. And I love that idea of really looking at it through the guest's eyes. I have a little short course, a 7-day challenge, and it's really about how to improve the experience that you offer. And it really goes through each stage of the guest journey within your brand or within your experience. And the reason I created that is because I truly believe that there's not enough attention on the actual guest and how they actually come to your experience, whether it's virtual or physical, how they actually get there, where have they come from, what's their motivation for being there, and what do they even want out of this. Oftentimes we just focus on that main event, and we kind of forget all those little touch points that come along the way. Yet those are the opportunities where we can create defining moments. It's not always about
Yes.
that big like impactful, expensive moment in the experience. It's every single moment along the way. So from your point of view, especially as you've done a lot of virtual work now and kind of really stepped into that space for me anyway, as like a virtual expert in terms of experiences, if we are really looking through the eyes of our guests, what's a couple of things that, if I was a brand and I really wanted to bring my experience virtual and I really wanted to focus on the guests, like what's a couple of strategies that I could potentially begin to implement or get curious about if I really wanted to create something virtual?
Well, first, I love the way you position that, and that is, I mean, so my presentation I've given probably for the longest amount of time is called "Think Like a Fan," and my last name is Fanzo. It was like the perfect play on my last name, being a marketer. And funny enough, like I gave that keynote maybe 150 times on stage. Like I've given it by far the most keynote I've given. But over the last 3 years, when I pitched that, most people are like, "Oh, we got that down. We understand that." And the funny thing is, they'll say, "I got that down, but we're focusing on empathy." And that, like, it really unnerves me a bit, because to be empathetic, we must be able to feel what others feel. We must be able to walk in the shoes of what others are experiencing. And yet when we kind of like dismiss this idea of looking at it through the eyes of the audience, and that we can never be empathetic. Like, I really feel like empathy, and this is like my like soapbox in a weird way, is like, I do not want empathy to become a buzzword within marketing. Like that really scares me, because some of the words like transparency and authenticity, they were buzzwords for a while, and I think we've merged now to understand their value. But I really believe in that importance and value of empathy, especially in the world today. But if you're not starting by committing to listening, to committing to experiencing how the audience is viewing things, where they came from, their journey to get to become who, your customer, you'll never be able to be empathetic. And so when you position that like from this virtual perspective, I mean, that's where I think we start. I think most virtual events suck, in my opinion, when they just try to take something like, hey, we had a 4-day event, let's throw it online. Or, hey, it doesn't cost any money for a webinar, let's just do a 3-hour webinar and bring in six speakers and let's do it. And that's such a dismiss. And I think, like, first of all, it doesn't respect the audience's time. It's not built with a strategy that makes a lot of sense. And so for me, when I look at virtual, what I try to ask people is like, what does success look like? What are you trying to achieve? And sometimes they'll be like, well, we want to grow like our event numbers, or we don't want people to not show up to our next offline event. I'm like, well, that's not success. Like that's something you're trying to like put a Band-Aid on, but like, what is it like truly? And oftentimes what I try to break this down to is like, and I used the term before, like removing the mechanics. And that's really what removing the mechanics means, is like, okay, if it's the coffee shop, like the coffee shop, yes, the aroma, but like what about the coffee shop made it easier for you to sell or create a relationship than what we do online? And it's like those things that I said, okay, it's the committed attention, right? It's the ability for us to talk about things that aren't marketing and selling. It's our ability to build trust in like a truly authentic conversation. Okay, those 3 things, now how do we position them virtually in a way that still conveys the same messages? And so I think we're right now, we're doing a lot of things like, oh, I can do a Zoom, I might as well, right? And everything's like Zoom. And I make the joke, like, I don't think we have Zoom fatigue any more than we had meeting fatigue in the office, right? Like, yes. How many meetings did you go to and you're like, this could have been done in an email or a phone call? Like, we did not need an 8-person meeting. Well, the same thing happens with Zoom. Like, you're getting on a Zoom call. I mean, I had one a month ago, and it's still like, we literally 8 of us got on the Zoom call, and the entire call was, Brian, we just wanted to say thank you for doing business with us. And I was like, all right, cool. So like, that's all we wanted to do. Like, it was a minute and a half in Zoom. And I was like, you could have sent me, I mean, if they wanted to make it personal, they could have sent me a video in email, yes, which would have been, part, but like, and so when I look at virtual, I look at the experiences we're at today, I still feel like we have event professionals trying to save their jobs and their industry, which I respect. I'm in that space. And then we have a whole other group that is like thrown into virtual to be like, I need sales leads. I need people to sign up for my newsletter. I need whatever those things are. But I think the people in the middle that are like, how do I create an experience in a world that only allows us to connect virtually are the ones that are succeed. So I think throw out the offline event, throw out the sales marketing quota you're trying to achieve, and really focus on that. Okay, what is something I can provide the audience? And it could be a 30-minute webinar. It could be at 6 hours. I've done some really long sessions that I feel are really valuable, but I think that's a big piece of it. The other part of it is I think about when we go to an offline event, why is the event 5 days, right? It's because you have a lot of things you want to convey and you don't want people to fly in and fly out, right? Like, hey, they're in there, let's fly in, let's knock it out. Well, virtually, that's not the case, right? Like, there is no reason for something to have to be back-to-back days virtually. And this is something like, when I say this, a lot of the event people are like, that's crazy. Like, because like today as consumers, we have the power, right? Like we get to decide when we watch something, where we watch something, how we watch something, how long we watch something, right? And like, look at Netflix and even, Uber, and then we have food, even like, I think it's funny, like the album came out this morning and I was laughing because I remember being like, you had to listen to it on the radio and then you had to go buy it was a much more like we were at the mercy of the artist and the album. And here, it was 10 a.m. and I already listened to the full album that came out at midnight, right? And so I guess like where I'm trying to kind of put the wrap around this is, don't think about it as how many days or how many hours, but okay, what is that experience I'm going to create? And how much commitment do I need from my audience to deliver that? And if I deliver that, the next thing I do, they're going to show up, right? Like that's what people tell me, like, Brian, I need to do back-to-back so they continue to show up. Well, that's the reason you're saying that is because you believe what you're providing is not good enough for them to remember next week, next month. And so that's really where I focus a lot right now. I also think we're missing, we have virtual event that focuses on the content and forgets the customer. We have ones that focus on the customer and forget to include the speaker. And so, a lot of speakers are horrible on video. Two of my favorite speakers in the world, they're just not very good on video, right? They've been doing it so well on stages, they just can't convey that. And so when we're building out this virtual experience, we have to think about it from all sides. I call it a 360-degree view. And that is scary. And yes, I can't tell you how many times people tell me, Brian, virtual is great because it's cheaper and easier. Well, it's cheaper and easier to put on something crappy and just throw it up and let people, you're like, oh, I did it, check a box. But if you truly want to create something memorable and worth someone's time and build that relationship and that experience that moves your business needle, it's actually probably more work. It's actually probably more planning. But in my opinion, the end result is greater because you have more data, more connection. And I think when you're thinking about it, like, this is probably the place where I start, is that I believe every business is in the business of trust. Plain and simple, building trust, maintaining trust, and scaling trust. In some form or fashion, that's what you're doing. There's some businesses where it's, hey, I need this product and it's price point, comparison. But for the most part, it's a trust game. And I think when we're looking at virtual, we have to really ask ourselves, how am I building trust? How am I maintaining trust? How am I scaling trust with this experience? And if I'm not, I probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and when and a physical experience, you have almost an ease of letting people be impacted and connect quite easily, right? Because you're in the same room, and it's really the onus is on them a lot of the time to make that event what they want it to be. Whereas virtual, you do have that physical barrier of the screen of not being in the same room. And again, like you're saying, instead of just checking that box, again, it goes back to how do we want them to feel? So when they finish this event, how do we want them to be impacted? And that is going to be our biggest challenge, because now they're sitting at their computer desk, they've got, many distractions around them, and they're not potentially, like you mentioned, not fully present in the event itself.
And that's because serendipity just doesn't exist online, right?
Yes.
Like we can't have that. And like as an event, and this is such a great point and I love the way you said that, because part of it is like, as an event, you're like, put the right people in the room, create the right ambiance, give them the right amount of freedom, the right amount of control, and the magic will happen, right? Virtual, it's like you can put everyone in the right room, and if you're not facilitating connection or conversation, it's going to be disconnected. It's going to feel, and that's so important. I'm glad you kind of brought that back up.
Yeah, and how to start the experience even before they they open up that Zoom link. All right, that's part of it. Like you said with Adobe sending you that box, like it really starts with before that. I also love your what you said about the album and the fact that you can listen to it whenever you want. One of my biggest memories in terms of music growing up was we had a radio station in Australia called Rage, and in the evenings it counts down, and I used to stay up so late till like 9 o'clock or something. And I would wait for the number one so I could press record on my tape recorder. And I would get so angry when the radio host would talk at the beginning, they kind of come in and talk, or at the end, I'd be like, no, like this is my work. I've been waiting like hours to press record, and they're still talking like throughout the little intro of the song. I just that just came to me then. It was
I tell you what, and you telling that, like that nostalgia just brought me the experience that I remember doing the same thing. Like I remember like one eye open looking for the record button to make sure I hit record, right? And like it was on my nightstand or somewhere. I'm like, I just need to record this song. Yeah. And like right there, like, I mean, we can say like, oh, kids have it easy today, right? Like, but I think like it's not about like easy. It's like, hey, we all wanted stuff on demand. We like, we are, that's what we all wanted. But now that we have it, it's given like a lot of the control to the consumer. And like, I mean, think about that from the radio DJ, like he had the ability to not only like change how we were experiencing that song, but like he got to decide how long he talked, how long interrupted what we were waiting for, right? And like right now, we as the consumer gets to decide all of that. Right. And I think now it puts a lot of the onus on the other side. But I love that you brought that up, because like as soon as you were saying that, I was like, I can picture, like I know that my tape recorder was yellow. Like I remember, I can picture where it sat on my bed. I even know the house that I was living in at the time. Like that there is something magic about those like shared experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I want to do a really practical example here. So let's say that I'm a chef. I've cooked in restaurants around the world, and I've transitioned out of restaurant, and now let's say I've been doing it for a year or two, where I've actually cooked private dinners, private 5-star dinners for small groups of people that would come to wherever. Let's say my house. I had a great kitchen, and they would come and have these beautiful experiences. Obviously 2020, I can't do that anymore. Nobody's coming to my house at all. And what I've seen personally, there's just a trend for chefs or anyone, tour providers that provide food tours around the city. The go-to experience virtually is like a cooking class, like a live cooking class. So I want to step away from that, because that's all. When you look at Airbnb virtual experiences, cooking is just it fills up the spaces. So let's say that's my position, and I want to do something that's not cooking, but I mean cooking focused, but not a cooking class. But I really want to create some kind of magic in an experience. Can you think of anything off the top of your head from a virtual point of view that I may be able to connect with my audience? And I think that's one of the biggest things, is stay connected to the audience that I have, because I think we all have examples of brands or individuals that we've been connected to that have just completely kind of disappeared and in this time. So does anything spring to mind of something that I could do as a chef?
Love the chef example, because the perfect example of, in my opinion, the lazy transition to virtual is the cooking course, the cooking class. Because the funny thing about that is, the reason you want a chef to come into your house, or you go to a chef's house and have a private dinner, is you want them to control and take over your experience. Right. A cooking class is like, hey, I want you to do the things, and I'm going to direct you how to do it. Yeah. Like, it's like, wait a second, like you're telling me that this is the same thing. And I understand like the leap that we make there. But when I look at it, this is where we strip the mechanics out, and we think, okay, well, I can't come in their house, and maybe I can't cook all of the things for them, right? But what can I do around that, right? And part of that, a great chef is not only, like you said, even with Cirque du Soleil, right? It's the experience before the first taste, right? It's understanding the ingredients, it's understanding where they came from. It's even helping you understand how to lay things out, understanding why these processes exist in your cooking, or in your, in that kind of shared experience. And then there's also there's an element of that experience of a chef coming into your house, that they know when to interrupt. They know when to guide you through your course. But they also know when to let you experience it, right? And like when you set this up, you said like that maintaining that connection. I think the thing with virtual that is so important is knowing when to connect and when to just be there and allow it to kind of simmer and exist, right? Use a cooking term there. But like that to me is part of the beauty. And so when I think about this, I think it also comes down, it's more than just, doing a cooking course. It's a cooking class. It's everything from maybe I could guide someone to, purchasing the ingredients online and things that they could think about from like that side of the house. Or even, okay, when you're setting yourself up and you're cooking these, this experience for your family and friends, there's also like, okay, do people get to-go bags, right? When they leave, right? Can they take some of the food? Maybe it's the dessert they get. Okay, maybe rather than helping them do all of these things, maybe it's them, you're focusing on them. Okay, let's set the experience up so that the thing at the end, which might be the dessert or the wine or the coffee, is something unique, right? Like maybe it's a unique recipe, maybe it's a unique way of doing something that they've never thought of, right? Or even maybe as you're looking at this whole experience, maybe you're guiding someone through, but you're not teaching them how to do it. You're kind of like giving them, okay, I understand that you boiled your pasta and you put your pasta in the water after it was boiling. I would do it this way, right? Like it's that merging of like coaching and like helping people kind of see that journey. And I think you can do that in many different ways. And I also think part of what we can look at this in is like, what can we help people do beyond the physical piece of cooking, right? Or that physical piece of, an in-house dining experience. And so maybe it's, hey, not just a cooking class, but someone's going to be with me that's going to provide the entertainment. Someone's going to be with me that's going to discuss some interesting facts. We're also going to have someone included in this experience that knows how to network and break, the silence that happens sometimes at a dinner table, right? So, because I think there's an event that I've been coaching for this year, and they have cooking nights. They had a magician. They have a ukulele player that comes in one night and play. Really cool. Like they do really unique things, but everything is disconnected, right? And because it's disconnected, everything feels kind of like, okay, I went and did this, I went and did that. But really, like a dinner party at a chef's house, I want that all to be facilitated like an orchestra perfectly for me. And I think as a chef, maybe your job ends up being less about coordinating and helping them cook the food and more about coordinating that entire experience that you normally do. It just kind of happens on its own. And so I think I think the coordination from like, okay, I'm going to help you select the music that you're going to have while you're eating your food, right? I'm going to help you think about like, even like how you're preparing things, what are you doing with things afterwards? Maybe even everything from the thank you card that you send to the guests after a dinner party, right? Like, and it sounds crazy for a chef, because it's like, wait a second, like that's not my job. And it's certainly not your job to deliver that. But if you think about that experience that you already deliver, you're already helping them see that, right? Like, why do you bring this special packaging for that dessert for every person to take home? It's not because you're just like kind. You're like, that if everybody takes a piece of that special dinner home, the experience goes home with them. They remember that, right? And so I think we can really embody that and kind of get creative with what we're doing.
That's exactly right. And exactly like you said, get creative and think about all the elements that naturally happen at a dinner party that you now have to facilitate. And one example that I will add to your suggestion that I just thought of then, I didn't think of this before, but maybe even starting with posing them a question of what do you love about food? What is it that you love about food? Like when you think about your favorite meal, like what are the memories come up? Again, we're thinking about how can we impact our guest and how do we want them to feel? If this was not a virtual experience, why did they come? Why did they book with me? It's because they probably really love food and they love to be cooked for and they love to have a 5-star experience. So why not explore that at the beginning of the experience? So not only for you to get a deeper understanding of your guests, but for also them to remember, oh yeah, that's right. The magic, that's right. Like I kind of forgot about that. I forgot about that in the thought of, I have to go groceries and get all these things so I could make this meal that I really want someone to be cooking for me.
Right.
So yeah.
And you could even flip that on its head, right? The person, I mean, a majority of people are gonna be like foodies, right? But there's gonna be some people that just hate cooking, right? Like, let's just face it. Like, I go to a dining experience because I hate cook. Like, it's not me, but I love cooking. But like, that's also the person you have to address, right? And like
Yes.
that person's gonna hate a cooking course. Like no matter how great that cooking course is, they're gonna hate it, right? Like, and even if it's like very creative, like, but that person would love if you told them to send a picture of their cabinets or their refrigerator ahead of time, and you told them you don't have to buy a thing. I'm gonna send a box, and it's gonna be complimentary to what you already have. Well, now you're removing that like one of those pain points of like I didn't want to go shopping or figure out what to cook, right? Like I love that you because like that to me is like such a great like example of how we can rethink things, and it doesn't have to be something wild and crazy, something that we've never would imagine. But if we're willing to do that, it keeps that connection to what that audience was actually looking for with that experience.
Yeah, and it goes back to what I was saying before in the sense of we want to try and create as many opportunities for a defining moment as possible. And we don't know what that defining moment will be for each individual guest. And chances are it's going to be very varied, right? So we have to, we as the host, as the business owner, as the leader, we have to create the opportunity for that to then flourish kind of on its own. I would love to just say I'm a total beginner. I don't know anything about tech, and I just need a couple of bits and pieces to really start doing things virtual. What's a couple of really basic tech tips that you can give for creators that really want to go kind of online and try virtual for maybe the first time, maybe they've never done it before?
So I think the first thing is, my other podcast is Press the Damn Button, right? Like the thing about virtual and video as a whole is it's scary, it's awkward at first, it's weird, nobody's comfortable when they start. And so like my first advice always is like, whatever gear you have right now is perfect. Like, I don't care. I don't even know what gear you have. Whatever you have is perfect because you have to start somewhere and you have to get used to it. But that's kind of like the easy way out. Like I think audio is always, I think, the place you have to get comfortable with first, right? So, if you're wearing headphones, getting comfortable wearing headphones. For me, one of the big things is having a microphone that's not connected to me and one that I talk with my hands. I'm Italian, right? I have like that connection. So I needed a microphone that allows that to happen. But I don't like to wear headphones, just my personal preference. So I needed a microphone that could tune out the speaker so I can still listen to you and talk, and there's not an echo, right? And so like the microphone I'm using, I think it's $110 US. I have an $800 microphone that's literally sitting on the other side of my desk. I don't even use it very much compared to using this one because it allows me to be my most comfortable self and deliver my passion, my emotion. So of course the audio I think is important. If you have AirPods or Apple headphones, great place to start because now you're at least being able to control some of that environment. Right. And then the second one out there, lighting is important. And we talked about it pre-show, right? Like lighting doesn't have to be an expensive ring light or a light that you buy from a studio. And I will say, like, funny enough, like the lights that I have here in my studio, I've been sent $1,000 LED panels. The lights that I'm using are $49 US. Like, but they're just box lights that plug in, which work great. But when I travel, oftentimes what I do is I just take the lampshade off of the lamp in the hotel room, reposition it behind my camera, and then I turn the lampshade so it kind of redirects the light kind of in a cone direction towards me. Right. So like that lighting is important, and then trying to get beyond the camera that you have. I think right now, it's great to say that, but in 2020, finding a web camera is maybe one of the hardest things to find. Like no one has them for sale right now. And I've worked with Logitech in the past, and I couldn't even get one of them to send one to my client over in Europe because they were just sold out. But that to me, that just kind of each one of those things. But I think the basics are a microphone that you're comfortable, good lighting, and then trying to get a decent camera that allows you to kind of pick up some of that ambiance around you. And I think that's also something to think about too, depending on what you're delivering. Like for me, like when I present virtually, I'm standing. I'm always standing. So I have a standing desk. My camera can sit as standing. And the reason is because it's how I deliver my keynotes on stage. It's how I'm most comfortable. Right. And so the challenge I give to everyone, and this is the challenge for people that I coach, everything that I'm doing, is you have to set up your environment virtually that is perfect for you. Not for me, not for anyone else, right? Like if you like sitting, but you don't like having the back of your chair because you're afraid you're going to relax, you're going to lean back, get a chair that doesn't have a back, right? If you like having like a clean space so you can set your hands, that's a good one. For me, sometimes because I have ADHD, sometimes I can get a little bit like out of control. So funny enough, like I actually set myself up to where I'm away from my desk. So I can't even put my hands on my desk so that I'm setting up the environment for me to be best. And so I think the tech is important, but I think more important is creating that environment, right? Like even like, hey, let's bring the laptop up to eye level and you put a couple books underneath it, right? If people follow me on Instagram over there at iSocialFans, like I was at a hotel in Cabo a couple months ago. It was my first in-person event in a long time, but I was doing a virtual talk while I was there, and I literally took their desk. I took the luggage rack from the closet. I then took books and laid it out across the luggage rack, and I put my laptop on top of it. And I delivered a 45-minute talk, and I got maybe the best reviews I've got all year from that talk. And it was no special lighting. I had my AirPods in my ear. So like total equipment was laptop and AirPods. Literally laptop, AirPods. I moved a lamp behind. I use a luggage rack to put it up. But the reason I use that as an example is I created the environment where I was comfortable, right? I was standing. I was able to stand back far enough away because I had the AirPods. I was wireless, so I could still use my hands. And I was still able to deliver the experience that I was, set out to achieve. So yeah, focus on the environment. And it doesn't mean you have to have a studio, right? Like maybe it's in your master bedroom, but maybe it's the space is, a window, or maybe it's a space where I needed my desk turned a different way so that I feel like this area is mine. Like whatever it is, focus on like that environment and setting up your own environment.
I love that. And I recently ran a leadership workshop on a retreat, virtually, obviously. And I was doing it sitting down. I didn't even think about it, but I'm used to doing it walking around the room and interacting and live and using my hands. And the minute I started, I was like, oh my gosh, why am I sitting down? I didn't even think of this. And now I know if I was to repeat that actually I am repeating it in an upcoming workshop series, but I know that I need to be standing because that style of presentation that I did, it flows best when I'm kind of standing and I can move a little bit. So exactly to your point. And I also remember, I would probably add to that as well, just practice a little bit. The best way for me, like Instagram lives, they come and go in a hot second, right? And I do an Instagram live every Sunday night, 6:00 European time. And the first one I did, oh my goodness, I could feel like sweat dripping. I was so nervous. Like I kept like stuttering over my words. I think it lasted about 2 minutes. And then I was like, okay, and all right, see you later, everyone. And it was horrible. And now I've done that about 20 times. And now I feel a lot more comfortable doing it. So, Instagram is a perfect example of a platform that, especially stories, that you can do it and it will go away. So you can practice, but then it doesn't have to live on forever, so.
Yes, I've done over 3,500 live streams, and every time for live streaming to me is that practice. It's I get to test my eye contact. I get to test my content, right? If like all of a sudden no one that's watching like made a comment, okay, is it not relating, right? But it's also getting comfortable, right? And that's where, press the down button for me has always been about like testing and tweaking as you go, because you won't know what works until you try it. And we have like this weird idea that either has to be perfect before we try it, or we have to try it once we're ready, right? And like, if you're waiting to be ready or waiting to be perfect, you're just never going to try it. And you're going to be like, keep putting it off, keep making excuses. So I love that. And, another thing you said there, which I think often goes overlooked, find a way to be consistent with your audience, because that consistency not only is great for your audience, but it puts the onus on you. You just said, every Sunday night you're doing a live, right? Like now, if I'm a consumer, I know I don't have to know anything about you. I just know I can tune in on Sunday nights. Mm-hmm. I also know you're pretty trustworthy because you're doing something on a regular basis and giving away free content or free information. Right. That is so overlooked in this journey where people are wanting to, I want an audience, I want to build a community, I want influence, I want, but I think that consistency matched with your ability to kind of learn as you go. I mean, my first 1,000 videos, like I don't want people to go back and watch, right? Like, because I already talk fast, but I talked fast and I went places that didn't make any sense, right? And then not only did I talk fast, but I like my stutter was a little bit more, and then like I would move in and out from the microphone and like not realize how bad that sounded for my audience, right? And I think that's kind of the beauty of, and I will say this too, for those that are still not convinced right now, when you're listening to this podcast and listening to this entire experience, right now is the time to try it. because we are very forgiving to people right now trying this whole virtual online thing, right? Like, but 2 years from now, when people are like, okay, hey, remember 2020, 2021, whenever like we realized that like virtual and video isn't going away, like that's when you should have tested this, right? Like, 2023, 2024, we're going to expect a higher quality level. Right now, people, I mean, it's why TikTok is amazing, because TikTok, although there's trolls and there's hate, and I'm not one that's oblivious to that, but there are so many people that are just real and authentic. And I interviewed 25 creators on TikTok that were from professions that you never would have imagined, right? So they were nurses, stay-at-home moms, lawyers, police officers. I interviewed, they all had 1 million followers or more on TikTok. And one of the things that I loved was one of the common themes was, I'm not a creator, I'm not like an influencer, but I've always had a story to share. And TikTok allowed me to get comfortable on video without having to use my voice, because you can use songs. Then I got comfortable on video. Then I started to introduce my voice. Well, then once I realized my voice mattered, I started to test different topics. Then I realized that this topic on being, a stay-at-home mom that doesn't have mom guilt was something that related. And like listening to that, that's the power where we're living at right now, is that if you're willing to put it out there, you can lean into what works as you kind of discover it. And that's what these TikTok creators are doing, that are making, high 6 figures of income off of influencer work. And all it was, hey, I'm gonna try this out. And I think that, for everyone that's out there, I think that's partly what this is all about, right? Try it out, test, tweak, and then just kind of lean into what works.
Yeah, I mean, being able to test it out, and then being very aware of how it went, and then what you need to do to change, and also asking for feedback as well, right? Like asking the people that you're interacting with, hey, how was that? Is there any improvements that you would like to make? I love that. If people want to work with you, if they want to connect with you, if they want to hire your, they have no idea about virtual and they just need someone to come in and guide them and advise them, what's their first steps? How are they reaching out with you, to you?
So, I think one of the big things, that's out there right now, for me, it's about rising, the tide for all of us to kind of improve. So I created a YouTube channel back in March that I'm just creating video on. And so the YouTube channel is Brian Fanzo, my first name, last name, VX, which stands for virtual experience. So VX, so Brian Fanzo VX. There's about 30 videos or so up there right now. And I cover everything from creating an interactive presentation to what a virtual event is. I also talk about some of the technology. So that would be the first place. And it's all free. There's no gated. I'm not pitching anything there. And then brianfanzo.com is my website, where all focus on virtual and me speaking. A lot of the content there, is on that same topic. I have a blog, of course, my 2 podcasts. And I would say, for me, the other piece of this, I'm launching, my company is iSocialFans, which is the handle that I'm mostly known for. I'm turning that website, that community, into a much more like a more media hub than it is more like right now. It's more of my business, and I'm turning it much more into a media hub. And by the start of 2021, it'll be focused on connecting you with the people that make up different aspects. So I'm going to have agencies, I'm going to have event production companies, videographers, let's say graphic designers, ghostwriters. I'm going to have all their information, like your ability to go there and say, okay, this is what I want to create, and find kind of people. They might not be the best, but they're going to be people that I've worked with that I trust. So keep an eye on that, iSocialFans. And I'm actually today, while we're recording it, so it's not the day that people are listening, but I'm FOMO Fans is coming back out on a weekly basis. So I'm kicking that podcast. I took a little bit of a hiatus during COVID, and that podcast is going to come out again, full steam ahead. So FOMO Fans with a Z or a Z at the end would be the podcast to check out.
I love that podcast, and I listened to it religiously for like a good couple of months. Like it was just your voice in my head continuously, and I learned so much. So yeah, for anyone, that is a great podcast to check out. Brian, thank you so much for this amazing conversation around virtual experiences, and thank you for being an incredible experience creator.
Thank you for having me. Congrats on the launch.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this interview with Brian Fanzo. We both hope that you enjoyed it. You got a ton of value out of the conversation. If you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you know when the next expert graces the Experience Creators stage. And if you would like to join the Experience Creators community, the sign up link is in the description box below. Thank you so much once again, and just remember that one great experience can change someone's world.